What's going on, everybody? I just wanted to shoot a quick video. I was just thinking about motors and stuff, and basically, I was like, I got three different motors from the same company. All of them are extra long stroke motors. You know, different prices on each one, but all of them are extra long stroke. All of them are 7-port motors. You know, obvious differences. You know, one of the motors has the case. One of the engines got the case milled out as far as, up here on the case, these first two fins, are milled and stuff. The head is milled so that the head can sit down lower. This one, is not milled to the degree that this one is. And then this one over here is not milled basically at all. As far as on the outside of the case. And with this one, I noticed that they just, did some, cut the fin right here, but, left it up in the front. Whereas on this one, the first two is cut all the way around. And this one over here is not cut at all. Now this head is milled to fit all the way down. This one has, slight, to sit down on there. And this one is slight, but this one also has, the drilled head, all the way up to this fin right here. They drilled the holes through it. This one has no holes drilled through it, except for where, the mountain screws go. And this one is drilled all the way, once again, to this right here. But like I said, this one also is milled. They milled like these first three to four fins and stuff, to sit it down low. But those are the obvious things. Then of course, when I look inside, hopefully you can see sort of inside right here. Let's see. Well, it's hard for me to get y'all in there, but hopefully you can see it right there. The port work and everything. And then hopefully you can see the port work in the Bonito. That first one was the Paloma. Hopefully you can see the port work in the Bonito, the exhaust and, intake. And then the rolling, the exhaust. Hopefully you can see down into the intake. Let me go back to the Paloma. You can see the intake. And hopefully you can see the exhaust. So all of them are 7 ports. But what I also noticed is the head buttons on them, all of them have the O-ring head buttons. But what I noticed is it's like mix and match parts for all three of the motors. Now I have to go back and cross-reference part numbers like cranks and stuff like that, cases and everything, just setting the carburetors aside. Cranks, cases, then obviously with the crank, you may have different bearings and stuff because Nova, they make different bearing sizes and stuff because the cranks may be a 14 millimeter, 14.5 millimeter. You got different crank bearing sizes that would correspond with that. So, but then what I was looking at as far as the power, because the crank gonna come from the power, I would think majority of it would come from the crank, the timing on the crank. And that's what got me into thinking about, okay, all right, you can have a stock motor that's sort of modified straight from the factory. Most of these motors come with a little bit too much power as far as for racing anyways. Now, as far as for bashing and stuff, you know, always more power, more power, more power, baby. Simple as that. But at the same time, even with bashing, you can probably have a little bit too much power and stuff. Whereas though if you're not gearing your power right, you know, gearing the buggy right, you got it screaming wide open, and you going 300 400 feet away from you, or you got it screaming 300 400 feet. you know I don't believe these motors are made to scream for long distances, especially the off-road motors. Now maybe if you get into like a motor designed for on-road and stuff like that, where the timing of the crank is different, you know just the general nature of the engine is different. Whereas though it's more made to stay more on a higher RPM side for a longer period of time, then yeah, scream away. But as far as the off-road motors, I believe they specifically designed more for all-out speed or all-out throttle for a shorter distance. When I look at the tracks and stuff, even the bigger tracks, that the professionals race on, the club racers and whatever, when you get to the bigger size tracks, usually the main straightaway will be around 200 feet, 180 to say 200, maybe 210, 215, somewhere in that range. That's usually your bigger tracks with your longer straights, and you gotta understand all of this is scale, so I say all of that to say that basically when we bashing and we, screaming our motors for 3, 4, 500 feet because we went, 200 feet away from us one way, and then we held it wide open. It comes 200 feet, then it gets to where we're standing at, and then we go 200 feet, past us. Your car actually went 400 some feet before you got off the throttle. And when you tune in your motor and everything, unless you running super duper rich and on a high end needle, you're basically going to constantly just be running your motor lean. Because as that motor's picking those RPMs up, it's getting warmer, it's banging, kapowing and all that inside the combustion chamber, and it's producing heat. That's what the heat sink is for. It's producing heat. So I feel that, like sometimes when we get to bashing and everything, because I know I've done it myself in the past, where I just ran it stretching his legs and stuff, and couldn't figure out why my engine was running lean, Like, long as I'm running it right around where I'm at, it seemed like, man, my tune was on. But then as soon as I started running one way, then the other way, then the other way, and I'm going a total of 400, 500 some feet and everything. For the motor, that's like pushing the limit extreme. And then when you get into the modded motors, making even more power and stuff like that, that's sort of like, really pushing it extreme, because man, your tolerance is definitely tight. At least with a stock, you got some type of leeway and stuff. But that's getting a little bit off track and everything, but still bringing it full circle. I was thinking like, okay, the head button on these two, I know it's upside down, but the Paloma and the Bonito, both of the head buttons are 28025s. 28025s. Then you have the Roland, that's a 28030. So that alone tells me, okay, these two right here have similar parts, but then, and this one has a different part. That's just the button head, but all of them got the O-ring dust shields, O-ring dust shield, O-ring dust shield, O-ring dust shield. But you can just sitting here looking at them, you can see all of them have, exhaust port with boosters, Then all of them have, the 3-port exhaust, the 3-port exhaust. Now, when I turn them to the side and we start looking at the intakes, or I don't know the correct terminology, as far as engine building and everything with this, but I would say, I know some people call them just intake ports. Some people call them intake with boosters and everything. What I notice now is this one's a patent B. This one right here is a patent M. This one doesn't even say no patent on it. But this one right here and this one right here, if you look at the generic design of these side intake ports, they look very much the same. Just the basic shape of them. Now this is where you get into timing and all of that type of stuff. It could be just off a tenth of a millimeter between the two, even though the design looks the same. But that tenth of a millimeter changes the timing of the intake charge and everything, along with, whatever timing they have as far as on the cranks of these two. So these could have two different crank part numbers, which I didn't even check. But just, I wanted to shoot this video real quick. But these could have two different crank numbers and everything, part numbers. Whereas though the timing may be off just a tad bit, just a tick between these two, which would, complement the tick between these two intakes, And then you have this one, which is a total different design as far as the intake, the side intake ports, But then when I look at it, it's almost like this one, these top ones, took the same spacing as this right here with these two little holes, and this right here with these two little holes. It's just like, all right, they gave you the top part, and then gave you this right here. Which, if you look at it, this hole and this hole are basically in the same spot, along with this hole. But then these top part is a little bit spread wider, as far as the distance from here to here is wider than this and wider than that. But it sort of coincides with the distance from here to here, and then leaving this right there. So I'm thinking, Novarossi, let's turn these to the front port, the front intake. Let's get this in the shot. It's raining hella hard right now. But, just looking at the front, it seems like this one is a little bit lower than the one in the middle, the bonito. And these two are similar. So it looks like this one's even a little bit lower yet. And this one looks like it has more of a gap. And when you're running, I'm not a modder. Let me just say that right there. I'm not a modder, and shouts out to all the people who do modding and stuff, like they know a way lot more than me, when it comes down to these numbers, crunching this algebraic numbers and stuff, because that's what they be having to do. But it would just seem like, a lot of the modders and stuff, what they know is, if you change how far this is down or how far this is up, even the side, the exhaust and stuff, that changes the timing of the intake charge, the exhaust, letting out, along with, the crank, when they open up your crank timing and stuff, that hole in your crank, when they open that up, they changing the timing and stuff, raising and lowering it, however they can do that, And that's basically modding your motor. What I'm looking at is, say I took the crank from this one And if I had the proper bearings, if they got two different part number bearings saying that this may be a 14 millimeter crank and say this is a 14.5, long as I get the proper bearing that'll fit outer diameter inside this case, but inner diameter on this particular crank, that's me modding the motor. That's me changing the timing characteristics of these intake, these ports inside the case with the crank intake with this right here. And I'm noticing that's what a lot of these companies are doing. They got a base motor, that's pretty stout, pretty good, it's a hit. And then they may have other motors in the lineup, and they may hit you with, all right, we're going to mill this motor out in this case right here, but we're going to take this sleeve from this good motor, and put it in with this right here, and then we're going to match up, another design crank, and boom, they got a whole nother motor and stuff when it's essentially the same motor. And I remember a guy a long time ago telling me, all right, when you buy a motor, instead of buying this motor and then jumping and buying that motor and then jumping and buying this motor, buy this motor, and then when you get replacement parts, get a crank from the same company, or the same OEM manufacturer, but different part number. And he never told me really the reason. He tried to explain it, but I was young at the time. I really wasn't paying attention and stuff. But he explained it to me, not in full detail, but he was telling me that, you can basically mod your own stuff. And he was fast. Dude was fast. And all this stuff seemed to work pretty much all the time. And then when it didn't work, it was, a nice show. I'm talking like rods flying out of the side of the motor, the whole nine, But he was in it for that. So that's, like I said, I just been thinking, modded motors, stock motors and stuff, but then, getting 3 different motors from the same company, all of them, very similar as far as the stroke, the bore, even the ports, number of ports and stuff. And another thing he told me, the number of ports, they have something to do with it, but it's not the end all be all. Meaning, like, if you have 8 ports, that doesn't mean that that's going to make it the fastest motor in the world versus, say, a motor that has 3 ports. That's a 5-port difference. But, he was saying that where the ports are, how they're shaped, that all goes into basically timing. And all of my folks, that's, the gearheads and stuff that, got the real motors and everything and done work with real motors, got real work done onto your motor and stuff. Y'all know about timing, advancing and, retarding and stuff, and just getting the ignition right. And that's another thing. Like with the head buttons and the shimming and stuff, I'm not going to say shimming the motor, once it's properly broke in, shimming the motor is going to make it faster than, going in and, doing crank work and everything, reworking the sleeve and stuff, maybe even reworking the ports inside the case. I'm not going to say it's going to give you that type of, performance difference, because you can do all of that and then your engine come out, whereas though once was a low end motor, now it's a top end motor, whereas though you got to gear it down or gear it a certain way, to get some of that low end back, But I just wanted to shoot this, I'm just bored today and everything, like I said, had a little bit of time, so I just wanted to put that out there for conversation and everything, like I said, I don't know it all. I don't even try to be out here to pretend that I know it all. But, what I do know, I try to pass on, and if I don't know it, I'm going to just simply say I don't know it, and I'm going to try to learn it myself, But, like I said, back to the engines and everything, it's just crazy to me that, these companies basically, and these companies basically just mix and match different parts from within their lineup and come up with a different motor, you know. And basically they doing all of the modding for me. Simple as that. I really don't gotta do too much else after that. But to each his own. So yeah, I just wanted to get that out there to y'all and stuff. Like I said, I'm just bored and everything, just running my mouth. you know. But if y'all got anything to add to that, just let me know and stuff. Y'all know something that I don't know, let me know. And, we can chop it up and everything. All right, I'll holler at y'all.